Good evening and welcome back, folks. Up next is a session very close to my heart. Arun, Priya, and Wilfred, our CEOs from Will Grow USA, Philippines, and Africa, will be comparing and contrasting their experiences with incubation and working with entrepreneurs overseas, bringing valuable insights to the people here today. Over to you, Arun.
Thank you. Welcome to our session on lessons in incubation across borders. I think to start with, I want to thank Wilfred and Priya for joining us across various time zones so that this experience and knowledge can be shared with you all. Thank you, Wilfred. Thank you, Priya. The whole point of putting this together was that we are always in execution mode. As Will Grow, as different Will Grow entities, we are always working in our ecosystems, running programs, and rarely we meet periodically to catch up. But we never have a session where we compare our notes, talk about our experiences, and share with others in the ecosystem what has been working in our network. And so that's the intent of this session. I hope to communicate to the audience through our experiences wonderful things that can happen because of this cross-border networking and cross-border collaboration that automatically happens in the Will Grow network. So that's something I wanted to bring across. I have a few slides and so on to anchor the discussion. But to begin with, I wanted to each of us to go around and give a little bit of background about how we started, what we are about, because the individual country Will Grows have a slightly different flavor. So I'll quickly start with what I have discovered and what has worked out with orienting Will Grow US and the mission and all that. Hope you're able to see this. Okay.
Yes.
So, so far, Will Grow is always known as an incubator of social enterprises, focused on social impact, but fostering market-driven models, early stage enterprises. The change in outlook at Will Grow US was recognizing that we are also a network of incubators. And so Will Grow US's whole mission is to expand this into a global network of social enterprise incubators. The idea being that this leads to much faster scale up of impact. So our dream, our mission is actually helping impactful incubators succeed and scale. We do this across a few pillars that I'll quickly talk about. But our vision, so to speak, action activities and action-oriented items are to scale our impact by building a global network and also be a real thought leader here. So to be a go-to network for change agents working in this ecosystem. So which includes impact incubators, investment and funders and investors, and also social enterprises. But all the while, the impact on beneficiaries is the background on which we all work on. We are operating on three pillars, which is inspire, that is sharing our stories with everyone else. Our data, our well documented and objectively analyzed data with everyone else, so that people can get inspired by this and focus more on impact incubation. This session is sort of one of those inspiring events where we are sharing our experiences. The second is our mission is to incubate incubators. So far, we're doing only enterprises. So we are thinking about incubating incubators, hand holding, having training sessions, giving them the tools that we have developed over the years and so on. And the network formation is part of that effort. And then the last is our stretch goal, which is invest. Right now, we are operating under the mode where we invest in enterprises. But what we really want to do is have a fund of incubators where we invest in incubators and let them deploy that capital in a flexible, in an adaptive manner according to their ecosystem and generate impact. That's the core of all our activities: inspire, incubate, and invest. I just want to very quickly touch upon it. This is a busy slide. We'll go over this later, but we did a quick landscape research of incubators in the US. And what was interesting was a lot of the challenges that the social enterprise incubators face there is common across the world. So I thought this is a great place to share for all the incubators who are listening in. Very one of the first problems was even the identity of whether you are a social enterprise incubator or not gets usually lost in the activity. So people don't realize that they are incubating social enterprises. For example, in the US, there are a lot of economic development incubators which are focusing on social enterprises, but they categorize themselves differently. They all felt that the sector was oversaturated. So in that small ecosystem they thrive in, they're all competing for the same resources. This is the perspective that everyone in the ecosystem had. And there were networking and collaboration challenges. They usually work in silos, and when they collaborate, it is sort of whatever you need, whatever you see fit, you take from the network kind of approach. It was not very handheld, very tailored or custom. There was no framework for building partnerships. This was another question. Then the sector specialization issue is always there, right? So when you are specialized and focused, you come off very efficient. But then when you want to step back and integrate best practices, this becomes a conflict in the way you operate. So they all felt this challenge is there. I'm sure this is there for all incubators in the ecosystem. There were, of course, operational challenges in the development sector. We in Wilgrow joke around that there is a lot of staff churn that happens, and a lot of organizational knowledge gets lost in that churn. And so the continuity is held by a few people, which is not good for systematic growth in any case. So that was one of the challenges that they all felt. And of course, in our execution frenzy and the process, tracking and measuring impact systematically becomes very tough. Some of us are doing it. Usually, it's the donor reporting the requirements that sort of forces it. But to sort of look at the ecosystem and track was difficult. This was very similar across ecosystems. So to sort of deal with all this, we decided to form a network. And Rian, Wilfred, you will not be unfamiliar with this. This is what we do inside our Wilcro collaboration, anyways. But this is sort of codified into specific network offerings. I think I've spoken a lot about this, and these are very obvious, and we can go over this later. Basically, we handhold replication. We have a replication guide that we have made available to everyone, and we have a vital system. I think there was a session on a masterclass on vitals on this on convention. So we have a specific training program that has built on vitals so that you get familiar with the incubation process using vitals, which makes it very easy. We have peer learning sessions. Priya, you held one, which was basically sharing of knowledge by the practitioners in the system, so that programs can be implemented across borders. I'm sure you'll all share a little bit about that. We've realized that the same approach we take towards enterprises is needed towards incubators too. We learned this in the Invent program that we have successfully launched in scale. That is hand-holding and mentoring the incubator drivers and directors and the staff through the process. Of course, networks really matter. I will go into that a little bit later in the session. And we are also, as I talked about, the Invest Pillar talks about thinks about maybe a little bit of capacity building fund for operating the incubator and bringing it up to spec, and a fund of incubators, which is our dream, and hopefully we'll get there. I just wanted to do a quick plug in there that our first cohort for the Will Grow Impact Network starts in April. So if you are interested, go to our website and register interest, or you can reach out to me. With this, I just wanted to pass it on to Pia and Wilfred to talk a little bit about like how when I started in the US, I had to figure out what the ecosystem was and all that. So I wanted you to touch upon your journey, where you began and how you started, and how the journey has been so far. So it will be very useful for other incubators listening in. I think Wilfred, you will go first. We drew lots before this, and Wilfred goes first.
Thank you so much, Arun, for having me. Yeah, so let me start by introducing myself and what we do at Wilgrow Africa. So my name is Wilfred Njagi, CEO, co-founder of Wilgrow Africa, and we are the premier or the first healthcare-based incubator in East Africa, having been operating here for the last 5 years. It's only now that we can talk proudly about this, having carved the niche and having brought to bear the Vilgro brand. But that wasn't always the case, and you learn more about that in this conversation. But you're off against so many odds if you're starting out an incubator on your own, compared to being part of a network like Vilgro. Next slide. Yeah, so this is our journey. Very humble beginnings. You can see me on to the right, super skinny guy there. What had happened here is we were trying to save up enough to do our first investment, and we had to do this from our own savings out of pocket. We didn't have seed funding. We hadn't raised much. No one knew about us, and it was really a tough way to start. But again, thanks to Vilgro networks, Vilgro global partners and other funders that were willing to journey with us in this journey. Next slide. So this is where we are today, you know, having now learned through gone through the playbook, understood the Vilgro model. I actually was lucky to spend a whole year at Vilgro in India to get more immersed in what they meant by, you know, social enterprise incubation, what they meant by what they call high touch support. And very few incubators were doing using similar approach. Most incubators would have used the normal program cohort approach, but I was very keen to learn about this highly individualized, highly contextualized incubation model that allowed us to journey or tailor make the journey for each and every entrepreneur, at the same time not losing the flavor of the entire Vilgro methodology. So 5 years down the line, having started from a very humble beginning, we were able to now deploy over close to $700,000 in seed funding. And as of last year, that one had unlocked over $10 million in follow-on funding. And cumulatively, this funding went to over 20 enterprises. So beginning from a very small check of $3,000 out of pocket, going to $700,000 across 21 companies, unlocking $10 million in follow-on funding. Next. Yeah, and this is a trajectory. As you can see, not only did we deploy funding and unlock follow-on funding, these companies also grew in revenues. You can see that the first graph, our revenues, the total portfolio revenue in 2016 was about $4,500. 5 years down the line, as of March of last year, that was close to $2 million, $1.82 million in revenue growth. That means also more customers touched, close to 2 million customers or end beneficiaries using these products and services provided by our incubating companies. So you can see that trajectory, and that's the magic of the Vilgro brand, the tools, templates, the methodology. So being able to hit the ground running, you know, without having to reinvent the wheel. And yeah, next slide. So what lies beyond? One is we feel that 5 years, we've contextualized this model to an African context. We've learned a lot. It would be very selfish to keep this to ourselves. So what we are doing is, beginning this year, we are now embarking on an expansion plan, which is what I've called their scaling broad. So talking to other incubators in other African countries and you know, sharing our knowledge, what we've learned, our tools, templates, and holding them the same way we were handheld by Vilgro Global, and get this model to scale across the continent. I keep saying, if in 5 years, Vilgro Kenya was able to touch 2 million lives, if you multiply that to, let's say, 10 incubators, each touching 2 million lives, you know, you end up with 200 million lives. And for a continent like Africa with 1 billion people, 200 million lives is almost 20% of that. That means every 2 people out of 10 will be touched by this, by the work we do, and by the work that our social enterprises are doing. The other piece of this year and going beyond is scaling equitably. So we not only want to look at women as end beneficiaries, but also working with women founders, even including women in our decision making, having an investment committee that has more women representation. And then the last part is scaling deep, where we want to really go deep in that hand holding, that high touch support, really immersing ourselves in the journey with the entrepreneur, making sure that they get the best out of this incubation support. I'll pause there for now, and happy to take more questions in the next bit.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Wilfred. I just wanted to reiterate two things. One was this is just a journey of 5 years. Right? Will Grow India this is the 20th year, winding up actually, but 20 years versus 5 years where this has come about. And the other interesting thing was in about 5 years, so last December, we scaled and we rebranded what was Will Grow Kenya into Will Grow Africa, which is a significant event. So that's actually interesting that how this collaboration and how this a platform is helping us scale much faster than what was possible before. Wilfred, thanks. You touched upon something very interesting, that was gender smart organization building, that when the investment committees are there. I think we did with that well in Philippines, where we started the Wilgrow with a woman CEO. So I want to pass the mic on to Priya to give us an intro on Wilgrow Philippines and share the journey of how it has been so far. I'm going to stop sharing now so you can share, Priya.
Sure. Thank you so much. I got like goosebumps listening to Wilfred, because, I've really kind of seen that journey from the time he came over to India and spent that year. But let me share a little bit. Just bear with me while I share my screen. Arun, I tweaked your title a little bit, but, coming back to how we got started. So I think it's quite interesting. My journey is a little bit different, but I think, starting up and running an incubator, there's so many similarities to, I could really, resonate with a lot of the things that Wilfred was saying. So of course, again, I'm Priya Tachdi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Will Grow Philippines, which is really the hub for our work in Southeast Asia. My journey started off a little bit differently. I worked at Will Grow India for many years. And led our post-investment support to companies, and then had an opportunity to really start thinking about Southeast Asia. Once Wilfred kind of went away to Kenya, we did a lot of research in the kind of the next region that we wanted to be in. And an outcome of that research was we identified 2 to 3 countries where we thought, the ecosystem, the culture was similar, to the Indian ecosystem, and where these learnings, could be replicable, could be valuable. And that's what really took me to the region and to the Philippines specifically. Of course, embracing Will Grow's internal values of being entrepreneurial, I pitched this idea to Paul Basil, our founder. And then in his typical style, he thought about it for a few days, didn't say anything, and then called me and said, okay, Priya, let's do this. Let's go, let's go to the Philippines. So that's really how I ended up there and kind of, got started. And I've moved there about 4 years ago, but, so I think a little bit different for me was that, I was new to the ecosystem. I had been traveling to the region quite a bit. So I understood that these ecosystems needed that support. But I spent a whole year immersing myself in the Philippine ecosystem, in the Southeast Asian ecosystem. I traveled around the country. I judged more than 50 competitions. I met 200 entrepreneurs so that I could really understand whether there was a role for Will Grow to play and for our model to play in that country, in that region. And of course, the answer was yes, because, and it was quite a lot of unlearning for me coming from the Indian ecosystem, where we were still kind of, complaining about, like maybe quality of pipeline needs to improve and capital gaps and all of that. Going to Southeast Asia was kind of an eye opener, because we were way ahead, right? The Indian ecosystem was so much more mature. Of course, it's matured even more over the last 4 years, but 4 years ago itself, we were way ahead of what, I was seeing on the ground in Southeast Asia. And hence a lot of learnings that we've had over the last, 15, 16 years then kind of made sense. And, the learnings really mean that other ecosystems, like what Arun was saying, didn't need to take 20 years to kind of mature and bloom into the ecosystem that India is today. And that really is, essentially kind of, our global mission is really, as Arun was saying, and Philippines is exactly that. Very proud to say that, we are women owned and women led. And our focus, very much like what Wilfred was saying, is really supporting early stage entrepreneurs. And last 3 years, we've really been supporting companies. But, as I said, all of this ecosystem building, it started way before that. For me, the key piece is we've been able to, as soon as you kind of got there, it was really, we could really understand how this framework of Will Grow has really made sense, right? Because it's a holistic approach, right? We are thinking all the way of how do we get people to become social entrepreneurs, all the way to, how do we invest in them? How do we help them grow and scale and impact millions of lives, as Wilfred was saying. And that's, I think, for me, the beauty of our approach. So, kicking off with really the inspiration piece, really the thought leadership that, we could bring as Will Grow to a region that was really emerging and that's still quite young and nascent, I think has really been our journey. I think even though, again, like Wilfred said, even though Will Grow was kind of a very established brand in India and, among maybe global donors, in Southeast Asia, people did not know about Will Grow. So it's really about educating also and kind of building the brand and explaining, what was our experience in building the ecosystem in India, right? What did we learn? Where did we fail? And I think that really resonated with a lot of people, a lot of ecosystem players in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia. And that's why the inspiration role that we play is not as much of inspiring entrepreneurs, but actually inspiring the ecosystem to say, hey, like this is the journey we can be on. This is how, as an ecosystem you grow. This is how we create like a continuum of support for entrepreneurs based on every stage that they grow. And that's really kind of been my journey as well, focusing a lot more on inspiration in the early days. And of course, our core incubation. And we've just started investing. So again, we've only made one direct investment into our company, which fortunately for us, it was a great bet and is really scaling up. And that kind of has helped all of these numbers, right? They've reached, millions of lives already. They've raised follow-on funding. And many of our other companies in the portfolio are still kind of growing. 2020 was really an inflection point for us. Very interestingly, as the world kind of slowed, it kind of was the culmination of the last kind of 3 years before that of work. A lot of pieces kind of came together last year. And so we've seen a big inflection. If I had presented this a year ago at Unconvention, I would be saying 4 enterprises supported. And, a year later, we're at 38. So which is a little bit crazy, but, that's kind of the speed that we are going in. Just to kind of give you a sense, that ecosystem approach really has been what we have been thinking about. We have our own, inspiration and, events, but we also run hackathons, etc., because the ecosystem is fairly young. There are a lot of emerging issues, urgent social issues that still don't see too much innovation. So, so we kind of work on deploying a lot of hackathon challenges and creating solutions and creating entrepreneurs. But of course, the core of our work is incubation. And I'll talk about it later on, as we get into it. But of course, all of our incubation has been in collaboration with partners and very sector specific. I think a little bit different from Will Grow Kenya. We took a little bit of a different approach because of how young the ecosystem is. We kind of started off being fairly sector agnostic to really kind of dip our feet and understand the different sectors. But now as we are moving forward, we are kind of, coming back to the core Will Grow sectors and really focusing on different sectors. And the one thing that we're doing, which really the ecosystem has pushed us to do, is address the lack of risk capital for entrepreneurs. So like how, Wilfred put together that first check, we are trying lots of different pieces of how do we really unlock capital for entrepreneurs in the Philippines, especially, and we're actually launching the very first Impact Angel Network in the country. as of like last week. So so lots of exciting things happening. But going back to what Arun and Wilfred were touching on, for us, 2020 was really a year of reflection and looking at what are the opportunities. And kind of what we concluded was that we want to be the most progressive, value-adding, gender-smart incubator. And so gender smart is really kind of our priority for the year. So last year, we set out a goal of creating and becoming the first official gender smart incubator. So we're a bit of a race with everybody else. But what we really wanted to do was define that, right? And as Wilfred was saying, not only about supporting, femtech businesses or businesses that end up have women as beneficiaries or women entrepreneurs, but really thinking about gender as an organization-wide strategy so that we can be an inclusive impact incubator. And so for us, that has really started with each of us. We are everybody who comes onto the team truly believes in gender equality and building a diverse ecosystem. And at organizationally, as Wilfred said, it's really about having that investment committee, having a board, having team members, right, who reflect that diversity and across in the programs and the ecosystem. So this last year's really highlight for us was launching the very first incubation program for women entrepreneurs. So there has not been a program for targeting women entrepreneurs, and we're kind of proud to be launching that first program. And we recently were recognized by UN Women and Women Empowerment Principles for that program. Our next phase really has been to take what gender smart incubation really means, and happy to talk more about that, Arun, as we go along.
Excellent. So I just wanted to move the discussion along a little bit to cross-border collaboration in being very specific about that, so that we can bring out those lessons that we have experienced, right? We've learned. So specifically, right, I wanted to see what challenges you faced when we started out in this ecosystem, and how you overcame this through cross-border collaboration. For example, I always say that impact incubation does not exist in a vacuum, right? There is an ecosystem level support that's needed, but sometimes the ecosystem has challenges, and you overcome that through collaboration. For example, when I talk about training, it's really a collaboration between the US and India, and the work you had done, Priya, in putting together this replication guide and pulling the training structure from there. In many cases, many ways, even the vital system that we all sort of pioneered together with inspiration from Paul, based on that workflow of incubation that we have created. And that vital system is something that now I use quite a bit. This is a good example of cross-border collaboration, right? I'm sure you also have started using that in this help. But what I really want to go back is to go and see what were some unique challenges, one to three challenges that come to mind when you started this, and how did this cross-border collaboration help you overcome that and sort of stitch the ecosystem together, or whatever or find sources of funding, whatever that magic ingredient was, right? So whoever wants to go first and spend a few seconds on this, Priya or Wilfred? Wilfred, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, I don't mind. So there were about 5 main challenges when we were starting. One of them was pipeline, right? Since we were new and the brand was new in the region, again, it was very hard for people to knock our doors. And I remember Paul telling us to actually do the opposite. We'll be the ones knocking doors. And in every Monday meeting, we would look at who are the pipeline partners we spoke to this week, which ones do we need to speak to, get word out there. It was more of like, door-to-door approach of telling people about what we're doing and the kind of support we can give them. So that took a while. It was a bit of a challenge, but improved over time, especially when we started giving substantial seed funding. Then word got out that, Vilgrow Kenya is also investing. They're actually investing a substantial amount. So over time now, 5 years down the line, pipeline is gravitating towards us. Yeah. The other one was expertise, right? So I had only spent 1 year with Wilgrow India. So this whole incubation was new, not just to me, but now even the team that we put together, they had not been in incubation. Unlike Priya, who had spent 3 years at Wilgrow, all the three of us who came to co-found Wilgrow Kenya, we had very little experience in technical assistance, running an incubator, how to set up an incubator. And that is where the playbook came in very handy, and not only did we get the playbook, but we also got very high touch hand holding. Our founder, Paul Basil, would come every quarter. Every 4 months, he'll be here and holding us, whether it's in the due diligence, in being in the investment committee, in the diagnostic panels. And that expertise has grown now over 5 years. Now, in this region where we operate in East Africa, I'm proud to say that we are among the best in terms of what we do. And people, even from the success of our incubatees, people have now come to really respect us. So we become the first port of call for any healthcare innovation. So even other funders, other incubators, when they come across healthcare pipeline, they send it to us, right? So because they've now known the brand has grown, the team expertise has also grown, and we are also now investing some substantial amount. The other challenge, before I stop, was around like what Priya was saying. You're new in the ecosystem. You don't know, when you're in a jungle and you're very new in the jungle, you don't know what types of trees are in the jungle, what type of animals are there, where are they. So same for us, we didn't know who are the other impact investors, who are the other incubators, where do we get them, where are the contacts? And then this is where we really saw that power of cross-border collaboration. Just because Wilgrow India had been one of the founding partners of Andy Network. Aspen, those who are familiar with Andy, is a network of intermediaries that work with social enterprises. And they, having been a founding member, they were able now to connect us to Andy East Africa, where we were welcomed. Very, big people really knew about Wilgrow, and Wilgrow was known within the Andy circles. And then using that, we are quickly able to get those key networks in the ecosystem. And these would range from pipeline collaboration partners, downstream investors, other incubators. So that was really a good one. The other thing that happened, again, around cross-border collaboration was that the same year we were launching here, that's the same year that we had the first Sankap Africa Summit. So Sankap, again, having operated in India many years, the same year we came, they also came, and in February 2014, we had this large global gathering, the first ever in Africa of social enterprise movement. So in that one-stop shop, we were able to really quickly go there and network, and you could see now how this cross-border collaboration was even now taking a shape of south to south cooperation, where in one summit we had people from Africa, Asia, Latin America, all gathering together. So this is how this started building. Now the other layer was the funders. Again, there are funders who said that we have a multi-country, multi-geography, multi-region approach. We've really enjoyed working with Wilgrow in India, but hey, if you guys are going to East Africa, we want to be part of that. And thankfully, some of them, like Lemerson Foundation and Grand Challenges Canada, became the first funders of Wilgrow Kenya expansion. So it became such a sweet deal, all these pieces coming together in tandem, the networks, the Andy network, the Wilgrow brand, the Sankap, the funders, and that's how we were able to really succeed.
Excellent. Priya, you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of agree strongly with all of the things that Wilfred was saying, and hard to say that all those challenges don't exist. But again, I think I love what you've said there, that I would say any incubation doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? I think no one organization is the reason for an enterprise to succeed. I think we all have a role to play. And hence, as incubators, I think one of the things that is such a core value for Wilgrow is collaboration and that spirit of collaboration. And I think that has really helped navigate a lot of these challenges. I think one big challenge for the Philippine ecosystem was that this whole idea of social enterprise itself is new, right? There aren't that many models yet that have scaled up. So we're very much at the early stages of building out that ecosystem in the Philippines and in the region, which means that everybody is new. The whole ecosystem, the impact incubators were very handful. You can count on one hand. Similar to local impact investors, there's still only one or two, and which means it's a lot of the global investors, the global incubators, accelerators that are still kind of supporting entrepreneurs there. So I think coming into that ecosystem and really going in with that hat of collaboration is really what has helped me, I think, really build and establish and really kind of find a way to support entrepreneurs when mentoring is very new in the local ecosystem, when early stage capital is still very, very minimal and hard to come by, and the pipeline issue continues to exist, right? Because also Philippines is an interesting country where Metro Manila is really the big hub, which means that entrepreneurs outside of that hub find it really kind of difficult, and it's very hard to find them, even if there are great entrepreneurs that exist outside, because the ecosystem hasn't evolved. So, and to top that, we are new, as Wilfred said, even though, of course, I went with all of that experience of incubation and investment from here. Our team is 100% local and really educate, and it's a very young team, so really empowering the team, I think, to really even understand what is this high touch incubation, as Wilfred was saying, right? Because I think especially in the Philippines, there's a huge influence, of Silicon Valley. There's a lot of diaspora connections in the Silicon Valley. And so like everybody's image of incubation acceleration is really kind of all that they hear about in Silicon Valley, really fast, big investment, companies really scaling up. And in reality, working with impact entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, it requires much more time. And I think for my team, having been able to just rely on the replication playbook, rely on the fact that, even though I'm explaining all of this, hearing it from somebody who's done it before, right? Hearing from, either Wilfred's team or the Wilgrow India's team, even just understanding what a portfolio manager does, I think that has really helped us. I think importantly, unlocking those networks. So even though, I spent a whole year letting people in the Philippines know like what Wilgrow is and building that network, we had to do that in the region as well, because a lot of the players are regional. And then that's where these connections really kind of open up, right? Because somebody has heard of Wilgrow at least, and they kind of know it's an old name. Really, the Andy network has also been very helpful, and our role there, has really opened up a lot of networks so that we can have a similar language, a common space to have these conversations and talk about the challenges. For me, the big piece of cross-border has been really mentoring, because mentoring in a very, strategic way, spending more time, not just like in a demo day or just a meetup or a speed mentoring, but actually doing that mindfully, doing that intentionally, which is quite common in the Indian ecosystem, wasn't yet widespread there, 4 years ago when we moved there. So really, finding mentors out of, Africa, finding mentors out of India who can play that role in spending far more deeper mentoring, I think has really kind of helped. Because I think one big lesson for me is that a lot of the problems are exactly the same, right? Cultural contexts may differ, but if you look at education, if you look at healthcare, access to affordable healthcare, if you look at sexual and reproductive health, the core problem is still very, very similar in a lot of our emerging markets. So the potential for learning and really bringing the lessons from the other ecosystems is there. And that's where I think there's even more opportunity to continue collaboration.
So I liked what you said about the problems being similar. And I think I resonate with that a little bit, a lot actually. Because even if you look at it from the developmental stage of an enterprise, these problems are basically repeating on an endless loop again and again and again. I think the pandemic situation helped us do a lot of our processes virtually, and I think that helped all of us, both Africa, the US, as well as Philippines collaboration to get going. I think when you're talking about mentoring and tech assistance and all that, a lot of it is now virtual, and that we've really turned around and made that process tight. so that a lot of mentors are virtual now and they're able to spend time. Previously, this required a physical presence, right? I remember we were going to Uganda quite often to mentor. I just wanted to pull in a video, sort of a testimonial or an experience sharing by an entrepreneur from Uganda after this, to highlight this point specifically, saying in an underdeveloped ecosystem, this kind of a collaboration, cross-border collaboration helps. The quality might be a little not so great, but please bear with me, and I'll sort of summarize this after the video. Please, and I'll work with the Unconventional platform to upload a high-quality video for our audience. Just a short video to listen to Olivia, who talks about how she was helped because of this cross-border collaboration. So I don't know if everyone caught what she was saying. I'm just going to summarize by saying that the cross-border collaboration gave her specialists, technical assistants, and also engineering development assistants and all that, because the ecosystem in Uganda was a little underdeveloped. So even in the pandemic, we were able to do this across borders by engaging specialists in other ecosystems, and we're able to bring this to her boardroom basically. And that's what she was summarizing. He was even talking about mentors, mentoring her virtually. And Wilfred, do you want to sort of add something to this, where we were able to do tech assistance effectively for her or other companies too, so that the audience gets an idea of what actually happened?
Yeah. Happy to. So, as Priya was saying, both Wilgrow Kenya and Philippines are operating in somewhat a nascent ecosystem, especially when it comes to hardware inventions. While tech and others have really picked up in this region, hardware was still very nascent, and the entrepreneur you saw there is building a medical device. Actually, when we went to the regulatory for approvals, she was the third person to ever go through that regulatory body for this kind of approval. So we almost had to teach the local regulators how to go about it, because it's very new. And that means even now building this, the engineering required, the design thinking required, meant that we needed to look for skills that are outside the region. So that cross-border type of approach. And thanks to COVID, we learned that a lot of these things can be done virtually. So I know this entrepreneur is now, through Arun, was connected to a product design expert in India who is helping them now with the second level of that prototype. Again, being also able to access people like Arun and other technical experts remotely really has been really useful, especially during these times. We usually have what we call technical deep dives, not just for this company, but for any other company that is building something very high tech, very maybe hardware or something quite novel that will require to bring extra expertise to bear. Yeah? And what I like about Wilgrow model, to be honest, is that we don't pretend to be experts of everything, right? And we have this thing we call TAP, or technical assistance providers. Right? You have this network of people who are super experienced in that niche, be it IP, be it human-centered design, be it engineering, be it whatever skill set that we don't need to have in-house. We are able to connect with those technical assistance providers. And again, COVID has thrown borders out of the room. So this technical assistance provider, like in the last mentorship call we had, some of them were as far as India, Canada, other places, all coming remotely to help one company, one innovation, and that has been really tremendous help.
Good. So there were other aspects of this also, which is basically even fundraising becomes opens up a lot of creativity. I refer back to an experience we had when we were trying to bid for a training program in the APAC region that was being instituted by the Australian government. And there was a very interesting approach where they turned around what was actually a competitive exercise in different people competing into a consortium building collaborative exercise, and said A has this expertise, B has this competency, and C has this. We need all of that. Can ABC work together and create a second proposal where you're all collaborating and delivering what we need at a much higher level? We are able to do this across, and so I just wanted to quickly touch on that, saying even fundraising has become a very collaborative effort, where initially the perspective I presented from the ecosystem, even in the US, was that everybody was competing for the same resources, but actually we're able to turn that around, and it's a very, very efficient and effective collaboration that's happening. I want to touch upon another thing, a quick testimonial from an Indian entrepreneur that we were able to help. Sorry, this looks a little biased towards medtech, but since my background is there, I'm able to get these guys on short order. Let's listen to Vinayak quickly about what was helping. And this is another point I wanted to touch, where I see a lot of potential for this cross-border collaboration.
Hi, I'm Vinayak from Europe. We have been working with Wipro US more than a year now, and Wipro US has helped us to evaluate the US market and also evaluate partners. They've also helped us to check the reimbursement strategy that can be employed in the US, and we look forward to working with them.
So a real quick soundbite. What I really wanted to highlight there was that even go-to-market strategies globally present interesting avenues for cross-border collaboration. I think Wilfred might be able to talk about this. Even Priya, you might, because your region is actually quite fragmented and a lot of borders there. And so similar market behaviors, but the on-the-ground relationship building that's needed, these present some very interesting opportunities for cross-border incubation. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, on what you've been seeing in these short accelerators and long incubation programs that you've been running?
Is that for me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So I think, yeah, it's really interesting, as you know, we were talking about kind of the cross-border, right? Because I really do strongly believe that you know, a lot of the problems, you know, at the core are very similar, and hence replication of solutions, replication of support, I think is very, very valuable. So one of the big things that, you know, a lot of our entrepreneurs really ask is, the first thing is that, okay, like what are entrepreneurs who build similar models in India doing? Like, how did they solve this problem, right? Because, you know, most likely that model already exists, and many people have tried and failed, and some succeeded at these models. And hence, you know, bringing that perspective of, you know, how somebody solved that, how somebody addressed that go-to-market challenges, what are some of the strategies that have helped, I think brings a lot of value to entrepreneurs. And we've really been thinking a lot about kind of, you know, really trying to bring those perspectives together, because it really shortens an entrepreneur's test and trial and tribulation when somebody's already done and failed at something, and they can learn from that quickly. So I do believe that that particular piece is something that, that as the Will Grow network, that we can really bring to the ecosystem. And I think there's a lot of appreciation for that. In terms of, what's happening largely in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is often, or ASEAN is often seen like as a block, but it's very similar and yet very, very diverse. So entrepreneurs who, so currently, for our work, 80% of our work is focused on the Philippines and 20% broader in the region. And we'll kind of keep changing that ratio as we go along. But in our regional program, for example, it's very interesting to kind of hear entrepreneurs talk about, the challenges that are exactly the same, but different approaches because of the local ecosystems. For example, right now, our Myanmar entrepreneurs, we are not able to reach at all given the political situation, right? But they still, whenever they get internet, they're hopping on because, they want to continue to progress, with their models and listen in to their peers talking about it. So for us, what we're seeing in Southeast Asia is that there are a lot of regional programs, I think, building cohorts from across multiple countries. And I'm sure, Wilfred, you're seeing this in Africa, especially East Africa as well, is that, and the reason for that and the value for entrepreneurs joining those programs is to get those perspectives and learnings, right? And as Wilfred was saying earlier, like the virtual has really made all this much cheaper to do. Earlier, I would have to fly everybody to Singapore or Thailand, right? Like a common space so that everyone can meet. But I think for us, sharing that experience, especially on go-to-market, in that virtual community, I think has really kind of been helpful. But all of it, I think cross-border and doing regional programs is only possible if you have very strong collaborations and partnerships. And I think in the shorter accelerators that we've been running, which really is kind of, for slightly more mature companies, it's really been with very specific sector partners. So for example, the regional program that we are running is in partnership, in collaboration with Habitat for Humanity. It's their accelerator that, we are implementing. And that really, we brought together more than 50 organizations to partner on that for outreach, in-country partners who can really surface those entrepreneurs, but also then provide the perspectives in the due diligence, in kind of providing mentoring, in access to mentors and market partners. And I think that really is the power of what we can do across borders. And I think the opportunities are kind of limitless. So I think, if there are incubators listening, I think the opportunity to learn from each other, I think, is priceless, because somebody has already tried something, it has worked or not worked. And not only for entrepreneurs, but even for incubators, right? We're all in very, very young ecosystems that are growing. And a lot of it is trial and error and understanding and figuring out how we can help entrepreneurs succeed. And in many ways, young ecosystems are usually very fragmented, and everybody wants to collaborate, and that's the intention, the good intention, but to translate that into something concrete is not easy. As Wilfred was saying, I think Arun, you were saying, competing for that same pot of money. We have made it a conscious strategy and a decision to fundraise along with other partners, and try to play to our strengths, and partner with other organizations who also want to support social entrepreneurs and find a way to win that money together.
I think that you make a very good point of everything becomes collaborative in a network. Fundraising is one example. Go-to-market actually became a very good example. So a lot of times partnerships, when left to enterprises alone or individual entities alone, there's a lot of trust building that takes time, and then there's a lot of tentative efforts. And when an incubator starts cementing those relationships, things come around much faster. Like Vinayak was talking about vetting distributors in the US, and that was a simple advisory kind of role that US played, and it sort of maybe continued into the future. Similarly, there was an India-based agribusiness company that had a sudden opportunity in Ethiopia open up, and Will Grow Africa was in the best position to sort of give advice on that and plan this. I'm sure even in the medtech area, right? This kind of a cross-border a market access help is given, and that really changes. It kind of broadens the impact also, and it also stabilizes the company a lot better. And so I see a lot of these kind of collaborations happening. Just wanted to quickly check and see if there were any questions. Please put them in the chat box. We're all happy to answer. We have only about 5 or 6 minutes left, so if you have questions, don't hold them back. But I think I'm going to start summarizing now, so that we can think about what all has happened, what this 1 hour has brought out in terms of our learnings. I think the first learning was this journey of impact incubation in a new ecosystem really gets stabilized and supported well across borders, because the problems and patterns are repeating, and a lot can be learned, and a lot of time and resources and energy can be saved by the shared lessons. So experienced hand holding by an existing incubator really helps. So you've seen this in the Invent program that we deployed in India, and we have also seen this in Philippines and Africa when this happened. Second, in a nascent ecosystem, methods of identifying pipeline with challenges where processes really help. So latching on to and sharing best practices and implementing processes that have been tried out in incubation makes this a lot more enjoyable, so to speak, in discovering pipeline and all that. The third was if the ecosystem has a lot of is a huge lack of expertise, and this sharing of expertise across borders seems to have made quite a bit of impact, and I think that is very beneficial. Where on short order, in the end, right, we keep asking ourselves this question of what value am I adding to the entrepreneur? What impact am I delivering to the beneficiary? This is the question we keep asking ourselves in Willgrow to keep ourselves in check. And we find that this value addition becomes much better, much effective when we have expertise shared across borders. Fundraising and go-to-market becomes a lot more effective. We turn the problem on its head and make it a lot more collaborative, where we do joint efforts together instead of competing for the same resources, and that actually presents a very solid solution to this kind of challenge that exists in the ecosystem. I think I sort of summarized what we discussed in the past, and I just want to, since time is running out, I just want to want you to take 30 seconds to answer a hotspot question, right? We all talked about what helped us in this collaboration. What would you like to see more of in this cross-border collaboration that has happened? And I'm going to put you, Wilfred, on the spot for 30 seconds. What would you see? What do you want to see more of, and maybe differently? But what do you want to? What new thing do you want to see on this?
It's hard to say this without repeating some words that have been said. So in short summary, what I want to see more of is anchoring in country partners. So any collaboration has to be anchored in country partners. Just because if we go to Zimbabwe tomorrow with Willgrow Africa or Zambia, we can't pretend to know all the networks there, all the people there. Even building the trust among the entrepreneurship community, we would need a local entity, a local partner who would then anchor our model,
Excellent.
So that's what we need to see more of.
So Priya, next 30 seconds on what new thing, what you'd like to see more of, and what different.
Sure. So I think, what I'd like to see more differently, which may not have done, is really experiments around early stage investments. I think, we've kind of followed a very kind of the Silicon Valley venture capital model largely. But I think at the earlier stages in very young ecosystems, we got to create flexible instruments. And so for me, there's a great opportunity to experiment in 1 or 2 geographies, which are very similar, and really Collaboratively create, instruments that really support very early stage entrepreneurs.
Excellent.
Which takes longer to, scale up.
Okay, that's the time we have. I just wanted to leave with the thought that so much collaboration happening. I think it's time for an Unconvention Global. Maybe later this year we'll plan it out, and I'll take the initiative and put it on our website. Watch our website. Maybe it's time for an Unconvention Global. Okay, thanks all for listening. I'm gonna stop sharing and hand it over to Maitri so she can sort of bring this to a close.
Thank you so much, Team Wilgrow, for that great session. Up next is the final session of Unconvention 2021, Inventing for a Resilient Future. Don't miss it, guys. It's moderated by our very own CEO of Wilgrow, Srinivas Ramanujan. See you there in 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.